Hey, good morning to everybody. Happy Sunday. It's Daryl here. It's bright and early, 4 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. Okay, this morning's it's gonna be kind of a rant, I'm afraid. All right, you guys know my routine. I've told you over and over again. I like to use this one app called Flipboard, and I told you guys before. I go through all the liberal stories, liberal leading stories. Then I go through all the conservative stories. Then there's a heading called politics. There's a heading called Donald Trump. There's sports. There's entertainment. And I go through all these. This morning I got caught up in the conservative one. And I have to talk about I want to talk about three stories in particular. And then I saw there was certain comparisons to Donald Trump. And they're taking Biden to task for certain things. And I don't know if the right-wing media just underestimates the intelligence of their viewers, or if they're just doing the revisionist history thing, or I don't know, but I need to talk about this. All right, three stories. I'll put the links down below for all these. The first one, Judge Jeanine. All right, she's talking about Omicron. I hope I'm saying that right. And how President Biden has put travel restrictions to South Africa. And the headline of the whole story is that the government's using this to get more power over the people. Is the government using this to get power over the people? It's kind of one of those headlines. Okay, so I turn on, and Judge Jeanine is talking about how Biden is imposing travel restrictions on 6 or 7 countries. And it's going to start Monday. Now, Judge Jeanine, the first thing she says is, well, what I'm really concerned about is what about today and tomorrow? Okay, so on one hand, she's saying, oh, the only reason, the title of this video is they're saying the only reason, is the government doing this just to gain power over people? But then on the other hand, as soon as the video opens up, Judge Jeanine is saying, well, why aren't they doing it sooner? Seriously. And then, look, I'm no travel expert or population expert or anything, any expert. But there has to be, I imagine if you're going to impose travel restrictions on thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, you're going to have to give them a day, 24, 48, 72 hours notice, because there's going to, then you have different time zones. And there's people that are already in flight, already in travel. Some people's travel takes 24 hours, 36 hours, different stops. So there's people that are already in motion, in travel to and from these countries. So if you just immediately, I guess what she's saying is, that Biden, on one hand, she's saying that Biden just wants power. But on the other hand, she's saying that he should do it immediately. What happens to these people that are already in flight? What do they do with those planes? Because now those planes can't land in America. And it would create a nightmare for thousands, tens of thousands of Americans and everybody else that are already in motion, in flight, in transit. So, this is a big, that's it. That's just the beginning of this article. I'll just stop there. There's more I want to talk about. Okay. Next, there's an article that takes Joe Scarborough to task. Now, it caught my eye because it said something about Joe Scarborough says that by April things should the whole situation that's going on now should wane. But when Trump did it, they took him to task for it. That's it. I'm paraphrasing here, but that's the gist of the title of this article. I'll put the article down below. Right off the bat, immediately off the bat, I'm thinking, yeah, April, but we're talking about different years. When Trump said this and everybody got on him for it, he was saying it in January or February of 2020. Oh yeah, the cases of COVID, they're going to go down to 15 and then to 10 and 5, it'll be 0 before you know it. Remember that? And he was talking about April 2020. Now, in this article, this article that's taken Scarborough, and I couldn't care less about Joe Scarborough. I've never even seen this guy. But this whole premise is just ridiculous. Scarborough's talking about April of 2022. Oh, in April 2 years later. So, and I'm thinking, look at the titles of these articles that they're using. I mean, you want to talk about grasping at straws. All right, I'm just going to keep moving on because everyone was like this. All right, the next one, there was several articles on this one. Somebody caught a picture of Joe Biden up in Nantucket and with his mask off. Oh my God. Oh my, and these are the same people, of course, that bitch and moan tirelessly about how their freedoms, it's satanic. The mask is satanic. It's suffocating the children. All right. Because somebody took this picture just perfectly. There's a sign in the window saying face mask required. And then behind that window is Joe Biden with no mask. It was just free. The timing was perfect for these people. What they don't say after I did a little research is that this is an ice cream shop. And Joe Biden had a milkshake in his hand. He was in it all starts to make sense. Because in this area, face masks really aren't required unless it's something like with a food service industry or something like that, or healthcare industry. And they didn't say anything about that, or they didn't say that he was actually trying to drink a milkshake, which it'd be pretty hard with a face mask on. No. So it kind of came out through the reporting a little further on that later on Joe Biden walked out with the milkshake. Ah, that makes sense. And oh yeah, and the mask was down here on his neck. So it was the timing of this. Like I said, and the hypocrisy and the ridiculousness of this all is that these are the same people. I guess their angle is the liberal elite are making rules for us that they don't follow themselves. Look. And like I said, grasping at straws. All right, just the last thing that came to mind. I started thinking about, they're complaining about, they're making a big issue over the deaths this year from the pandemic. And they're the most ever. And they failed to mention that the reason for this, the main reason for this, and I know, I don't want to blame somebody I love here, but they were unvaccinated. Most of them were unvaccinated. These are basically Trump-supporting Republicans saying, well, you're not trying hard enough to convince us to get a vaccination. It's all your fault, Joe Biden. That's basically what they're saying. And these are the same people that talk about personal responsibility. They're blaming Joe Biden because he's not trying hard enough. He's not thinking hard enough of a reason to make them take the vaccine. So it's his fault and not theirs. All these deaths. Oh, and never mind the Delta variant, how the whole virus mutated. Like I said, I felt this personally. When I sat down and talked with Audrey in June, she specifically talked about how Donald Trump got over it. She was a Trump supporter. How him and his whole family got it, and they got over it, and she could handle it. And she went down to Florida, to Jacksonville, and she passed away not even 2 months later, the Delta variant. She timed it just so that it was blooming in Jacksonville at that time, back in June or July of 2021. And the Trump supporters won't mention any of this. Oh no, Joe Biden's just doing a terrible job. One last thing I want to bring up. A couple things popped into my mind. Now, one of my very first videos back on I think it was on my first channel, where I talked about Trump and the 4th of July and him talking about airports in 1776. And because, Trump supporters are constantly talking about how Biden is losing his mental faculties. And I really thought about that. I thought about what Trump said. I'll try to dig it up and put it on my community page again. Trump's actual quote from that day, where he's actually talking about manports or ramports. It's supposed to be ramparts, I believe. And the airports, and they manned the airports. this makes no sense on any level. It's not just a gaffe. It's just a complete lapse of reality. And I started thinking about that very first video I made of him. I was just laughing hysterically because it made no sense. There was no explanation for it. You know, who in their right mind says anything about airports in 1776? One other thing I thought about was the eclipse, the famous eclipse moment, when they warned every single person, not just in the country, but around the hemisphere or wherever the eclipse was. Remember the eclipse? Not to look directly at the eclipse. And there's Donald Trump staring up, taking his glasses off, and not just glancing, but staring into the sun. Staring into the sun. And these are the same people now that are taking Biden to task for, I don't know, for drinking a milkshake in a milkshake shop. And it's insanity. The clips will be down below. You guys have a great Sunday.